Hello everybody, welcome to another watercolor tutorial. We are going to be painting this autumn painting today, and I mean this is going to be released in March, so it's basically like the complete opposite of autumn, but I saw this and I felt very inspired, and it kind of puts me into the fall mood because I'm filming this in July, so it's we're almost in the thick of summer, and typically like August is when you start feeling the autumn, like yearning for autumn, or at least I do. So I just saw this painting by My Magic Brush Gallery, and I thought it would be really nice to try and replicate. So I have taped the borders of my piece of paper kind of in like a Polaroid shape so that it's a square, and then I've taken gray that I am just applying to it, I would say the top half, the top third maybe, and I'm just, did I say gray? I don't remember if I said that or not. We're applying gray if it's not obvious. And I'm going to add a little bit of cloud cover at the top here. And that'll probably spread downwards just a little bit, but I want it to be just at the top because, yeah, I can already see that it's spreading downwards because we're gonna have some mountains here, and obviously I don't want the clouds to dominate the mountains. I have two grays. One is more of like the gray that I used, and one has more of a bluish tint to it, which I really like. So anyways, I am going to let this dry, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, so this should be dry. We're going to go ahead and start painting our mountains now. So I'm going to take black that is watered down. And you can paint whatever kind of mountain range that you want, of course. I'm gonna have like kind of a few peaks going, so one of my peaks will be here, and then this will go into another peak that'll kind of overlap this one. And I have a few mountain painting tutorials if you're interested. Because there's a few different techniques to painting mountains. I mean, there's different techniques to painting everything, really. So what I like to do is paint the outline of the mountain, so that basic triangular shape, and then I go back in and I do the shadow work. So obviously in this painting you can tell, hopefully, that my light source is coming from the left side. Now we have to go back in. I'm going to rinse my brush and touch this up a little bit, so blur things out and this is not really working out how my mountains usually work out. Usually they look a lot better than this. So I'm not really sure. I think my mistake was trying to follow the reference photo instead of doing my own thing like I usually do with mountains. Because usually I do my own thing. I'm being repetitive here, but I just have like 1 or 2 mountain peaks, whereas here I tried to do multiple and it's just not my style. But we're gonna try and fix it. So we might have to wait for it to dry in order to fix it. So the first thing I'm doing is trying to really make that shadow work obvious. I'm really not a fan of how these mountains are turning out. I've lost my touch, I think. Maybe I should watch my own mountain tutorials. I'll probably let this dry and then go in again with a little bit of black once it's dry. I'm not really sure why it's looking so bad. Like usually my mountains come out pretty good, if I do say so myself, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but we can touch this up in a bit. We'll just let it dry for now, and we can actually no, we can't work on the bottom part of this because I need the mountains to be dry since some of the trees will be overlapping. So let's just let this dry. So this should be dry. And I'm just going in with black watercolor. I don't know, when things don't work out, guys, it really makes me frustrated on a different level. Like it's when it's over and over and over again that something isn't working. I'm not used to failure. So this is very frustrating for me. That's actually a good point, just for myself. I am not used to failure. Just in general. I might go in with some white acrylic paint just to add a little bit of contrast, kind of snowy peaks, if you will. Because I think that's one of my mistakes, is I kind of grade everything in. Anyway, let's grab this I'm gonna grab that white acrylic paint and see where we can add some white. Along the peaks, of course. I think that's what was contributing to this weird mountain look, is my peaks were not nice and bright. Like typically the peaks, that's where the snow is. They're the lightest. So yeah, I'm adding these white accents along the edges of the mountains and kind of where I want little crevices to be, to accentuate the shadows, if you understand what I'm trying to say there. Because you can add some on the shaded portion as well, just little they can be snow peaks, or they, not peaks, but like snowy patches, or just accent patches. I'm still tempted to go back with black and just add like little hairs for trees. I should have done that probably since the beginning instead of lines. Then I maybe would have achieved the kind of look that I'm trying to achieve, obviously. Tricky thing is maintaining the correct amount of water to paint ratio so that you can get those really thin lines and not I don't want to make these mountains look like they're growing hair, so be mindful of that when you're doing this. I'm gonna just leave it at that because they're starting to look a little bit hairy. But we can move on to the next step. So now we're going to be painting a foreground of autumn trees, and this is what's going to make this painting come alive and come together and look all beautiful. So I'm taking this yellow orange that I have, and that's sort of going to be my base here. And then we can go ahead and paint some evergreens stemming from this base. So you want to overlap them just a tad. They don't have to overlap a lot, because in fact we want there to be a nice gap between, not a gap, but like this white space between the mountain and the start of the trees, sort of like this area here, so that it's very bright and obvious that we have kind of moved into the tree line. Apparently I've picked up a darker, like a more of an orange than a yellow now, without realizing it. So I guess I'm just intermingling the colors here, which we would end up doing anyway, but yeah. Like a river. So you just want to like fill in that whole line. I don't want to call it a horizon line because that's not what it is, but we can think of it as that for the sake of clarity. And now we're gonna have where you can pick up a slightly darker orange, because we're gonna be painting a second layer of pines. Now, this is a little tricky because you kind of have to figure out how wet your paper is. Because if it's mega wet, then these aren't going to look like pines. They're going to just spread out into blobs. So be mindful of that. But you want it to be moist so that there's a little bit of spreadage. I recognize that I'm likely making up words here. But not dry enough that it doesn't spread at all, because then you'll have a hard time like mixing things together in a nice way. And you can spread out the colors, like they don't all have to be like a row of yellow and then a row of orange and a row of red. You spread out your pines and intermingle all of the colors. So I'm gonna leave that for now and move into more of a red. See, you can really see that it's starting to dry completely now, and it's not spreading out as nicely as it did in the beginning. I need some darker colors in here, like a brown or something, maroon, because it's looking a little bit too bright for my liking. Not that I don't like a cheery painting, but we need to have balance. So I probably should have mentioned this like 35 trees ago, but I have multiple pine tree evergreen painting tutorials on this channel if you want to check those out if you're having kind of difficulties coming up with your own technique. Otherwise, it's quite simple. Like all I'm doing is painting a vertical line and then almost staircasing my wisps down that line, but just painting a bunch of concave, horizontally concave lines overlaying that vertical line that I paint initially. It's quite simple. If this isn't for you, there are so many different techniques I have on this channel. Like, please go check them out, because I even have a Skillshare class going over eight different techniques to paint pine trees, and all you need is the technique. Once you have the technique, you can kind of modify it and in the way that suits you and make it your own and refine it. So yeah, just thought I'd throw that out there. One of my goals for this is going to be released in 2025, which is crazy, but one of my goals for 2024, since this is when I'm painting this, was to release another Skillshare class. I don't think that's gonna happen. Most of my goals, my like artistic goals, are not gonna happen this year because well, no, I probably could make it happen now that our baby goes to sleep at 7 consistently. But before, when she was very itchy and she had eczema, like there was just no way that was gonna happen because I was spending my entire days just holding her hands. And what is my point? What is my point? Yeah, I think that's when I realized, or that's when I kind of made the call, yeah, that there's no point of continuing or even like trying to meet these goals that I made for myself. So one of them was create another Skillshare class. And what was another one? Oh, it was going to be to release, I think, another workbook on my Etsy, because I have 3 workbooks right now, watercolor workbooks, and I was going to release another one, or maybe it was a coloring book, or I guess a watercolor book. It's not color, like you're not coloring, you'd be painting. You can color it if you want, but it would mostly be for watercolor painting. Actually, you know what? Maybe I can make that happen. I wonder if there is a way for me to simply take a painting and scan it black and white so that you can then print it out on a watercolor piece of paper and then use that as your like stencil or your guide to paint. I wonder if that can be done. Because if that's the case, I mean, it still would take quite a bit of work kind of putting all that together, but mentally it's not as much work because it's just very repetitive scanning. My husband would probably do a lot of the work because anytime it comes to Photoshop or putting stuff together in that way, that's a husband task. Because I don't know how to do any of that. Mind you, so something that is challenging for us is right now in our current house, hint, hint, right now in our current house, we have 2 bedrooms, and the second bedroom is our daughter's room, but it's also an office, a storage facility, a laundry room, and the guest bedroom. And so whenever we want to use the computer, like we have to do it during day hours and when my husband is home from work. So it really leaves like editing, not my YouTube videos because I just do that on my laptop, but anytime I need his assistance for something to edit, like something with Photoshop or make something, it has to be during very select hours, which is obviously challenging to coordinate that with a baby, but maybe I'll make that coloring book still a thing. At least meet some of my goals. A Skillshare class would just be a little bit too involved for my liking at this point, because Skillshare has this very particular outline that they want you to follow, and fair enough, it clearly works. But then I have to film in like I can't just hit record and film like I do these videos. It's way more editing, way more like cinematic, if you will. And I just don't have the inspiration for that at the moment. I don't even know what I would do a Skillshare class on, because the one I have up there, like I said, it's the 8 techniques to painting pine trees. And that was like, that did really well because people, I guess, really like these kinds of paintings. But anyway. Okay, so where are we in this? I think that I'm gonna stop there because we're 30 minutes in. Maybe one more thing. You know what? I would love to add like a tree in the foreground. And that might be overdoing it, but I don't care because that is my style. Overdoing it is my style. So I'm going to pick up some brown, pick up some black. I should actually let this foreground dry first. Okay, so that should be dry. My paints, I need to make them a little bit more, like less water, more paint. Okay, here we go. So I'm just gonna have one tree coming up this way and maybe another one beside it. I probably shouldn't have added that second tree. Should I do another one on this side or should I leave it? I'm kind of tempted to add some foliage to it to match this vibe over here. So let's see. Sing me a song of a last time, sing that let's be high. So I'm kind of dry brushing it right now. That's how I like creating leafy foliage lately. Pick up a little bit of orange, pop that on top. Maybe a little bit of, oh no, not that color. I wanted like a red. Okay. I don't know how I feel about that foliage, because it's not it looks a little bit messy to me, but it's so hard to stop because every time I look at it, I see something else that I could add. Okay. I'm gonna stop there because I think I should have not done all those leaves. The leaves, in my opinion, kind of muffled out the whole like intensity of the tree itself, which is why I'm going back now after I said I'd stop and just redoing some of the branches to give it that the little extra. Oh man, my words are really lacking at the moment. That's all right. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So we can peel the tape off. And we have a nice little autumn mountain painting. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Please let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and I'll be sure to see you in the next tutorial.